to answer your questions, especially if there's any kind of personal ones which you're really just not sure on. She's the lady to go to for that. So before I start, I'm just going to run through what I'm going to talk to you about during this session. So we are mainly talking about support available from Student Finance England for entry in 2021 and 2022. We say this because it can change, the figures can change year on year. So if you are still unsure at the end, please do just ask the question.
That's all messages coming in, I think, questions.
If anyone, like I said, if anyone does have any questions, please do ask throughout as well. So in most cases, applications are done through Student Finance England. Students outside of England will apply through a slightly different system. And I'm going to break this down into what each of these loans mean. So just to begin with, there is the tuition fee loan, which all of your young people should be eligible for. And this loan basically covers your course, their course at university. So the maximum that a university can charge for tuition fees will be £9,250 for a degree level course. And this has been frozen since 2017. There might be other courses which your young people have applied for that are slightly less. So it can go down to £7,750, depending on what degree they do. So this could be things like foundation degrees. So that's what might change that figure, basically. What does this pay for? So a lot of parents and students alike have this question. Obviously, we appreciate it is quite a lot of money. So just to kind of run through some of the services, I'm going to use ARU as an example here, but this applies to pretty much all of the universities in the country.
And they're asking university.
So we have the library service to begin with. So that's, students will have access to that for 24 hours a day. In term time, huge range of books, resources, a digital library, laptops, study spaces, things like that. The tuition fee will also pay for the state-of-the-art facilities. So for us, I'd like to highlight our skills labs, science centre, theatres. We have our School of Medicine and engineering rooms, mock law courts and super labs, things like that. The money also pays for the lecturers and university staff. So university lecturers don't just teach your students, but they also do contribute to new and exciting research as well. We've also got specialist equipment. So students across the country will need equipment to be able to succeed in certain courses. So things like 3D printers, music studios, paramedic science equipment, various different resources that students need. And finally, the student services as well. So for example, at ARU, we have our money advice team, which includes Cheryl, who is here with us this evening. We have a free counselling service, Team Anglia, careers and employability as well. So basically, I'd really recommend that whatever university that your student is going to go to, have a look at the services that they offer, because it will be very similar for a range of universities across the country as well. And if you're wondering what this money pays for, this is basically a summary of it. Okay, so there's lots and lots of different elements to it as well. Okay, so for the tuition fee loan, students are not required to pay any money up front at all. Your tuition fee loan is not linked to your household income either. So there's no means testing for this. And all students, depending on eligibility, can get this loan. So this will cover the tuition fee and no more, okay? So for example, if your student's tuition fee was £7,700, they wouldn't get the £9,250 and be able to keep the rest, okay? They will just get the amount that they need to cover that fee. They will also never see that money. So parents who might be quite pleased to know that there's no temptation to spend their tuition fee loan before they start. Okay, the way that this works is the university will inform Student Finance England that the student has started the course, and the money is then released to the university. Okay, so that it doesn't actually go to the student at all. However, it does not appear automatically. Okay, so you must apply for it, which I'll touch on a little bit later. Okay, so that is the tuition fee loan. Now we have the maintenance loan, which gets a little bit more complicated. And this is the loan which I expect you might have some questions on at the end. So this is a loan to cover your students' living expenses, and it is means tested. Okay, so it means it'll be worked out on household income. The household income is worked out by the salaries and the income of the money for the adults in the house. Okay, so for you, that means that it's based on your income. That could be lone parent, carer, parents, carers, and their partners, both parents, etc., etc. If parents and guardians have separated, it will be the household that the student resides in for the majority of the time. If it is a 50-50 custody or share, this could be worked out by the individual and their circumstances. So I'll wait for Cheryl at the end for this question, because we do get quite a lot on how that actually works, but she'll be able to cover that at the end. So the loan is paid into the student's bank account in 3 instalments, and it will be paid into the account that your young person registers with on Student Finance. And finally, they will still receive a maintenance loan whether they are living at home or living away from university. So if you just have a look on the slide just there, it's just above my screen at the moment, but the living away from home is 9,488. That is the maximum. And then living at home is 7,987. Okay, so what does the maintenance loan cover? So when I say living costs, here are some things that we advise students to consider when they are thinking about going to university. So the cost of accommodation can vary depending on where they are planning to go. I would advise that they research into it to see what the most cost-effective way is. It does depend on personal preference in terms of whether they'd like an ensuite, whether they'd like to be close to campus, etc., etc. Food, so the average student does spend approximately £30 a week. That depends on how many takeaways they like to get. Bills, so bills might come in. This is more for probably students. Sorry?
18s.
So, sorry, just to carry on. So students that are living in accommodation in their 2nd and 3rd year, if they're not living in halls of residence, this is where the bills come in more than any other time, really, because that's when they're more likely to be privately renting. Clothes and toiletries, pretty self-explanatory. Just get them to think about what's essential and what's not. Travel, especially important if they are planning on commuting to campus, and if they are living away from home, I'm sure you'd love them to be able to come back to their hometown sometimes as well. So you want to make sure they've got enough money for that. Socialising, things like clubs, societies, their gym, cleaning products as well. We always add this on here because we do this presentation to students and we like to get them thinking. TV license, mobile phone contract as well. So these are all things now, especially for parents that are with us tonight, just to get your young people thinking about. That money, it can be very, very easy for students just to take it and go spend it all within the first few weeks. It is tempting, I've been there. but it's just important to get them to start thinking about budgeting. Okay, so this is a rough estimation of how much it would cost per year for a student to be at university. I will just emphasize the approximation of this. Okay, so it's not a case of, yes, they need to have £9,488 per year. This is just how much that is advised. So when it comes to the maintenance loan, the blue part is the loan that your student would be entitled to. So if you have a look at the 25,000, if the household income is below this, the loan amount they will receive per year would be 9,488. So they would receive the maximum. If you go down to the bottom, so anything above 62,288, the student would receive £4,422 per year. So that's the blue part of the scale. On the green side, that is how much it is expected that students make up to be able to cover their cost of living at university. So this can be made up, well, the expectation is this is made up from parents, okay? So from the people that are joining us today, but also students are advised to get part-time jobs as well. And that might be some other funding available for them through various different schemes. But again, I'll touch on that later on. The best way to figure this part out, because I know this, this table can seem a bit confusing. If you go onto Student Finance England, there is a calculator on there. Parents, you're more than welcome to go on there. Just pop your income in and it will calculate roughly how much your young person will get per year. So that's probably the best way to do it, but this gives you a really nice idea kind of what's expected more than anything. Okay, so when it comes to applying, I hope that after my presentation a couple of weeks ago, your students came home and said, I need to apply for student finance. That was the aim of it anyway. But they are now open for this year, but also for January starters in 2022. It is best for them to apply as early as possible, just because it can take up to 8 weeks to process. And the deadline for them, just to ensure that they do get their money before the start date, will be the 21st of May. Okay, so I'd really advise that they just get it done now, basically just to get it over and done with. And then it just ensures that they get the money before they start, but it also takes the pressure off yourself, but also off the young people. So each student will need passport, bank account details, and a national insurance number. If they don't have all of these, there is a list on the Student Finance website of alternatives they can use. The bank account that they register with will be the one which their maintenance loan is paid into. Please don't worry if your young person thinks that might change. They can also go on and update their details whenever they like. It should be approximately about a 30-minute process. Okay, so it shouldn't take them too long to go through the form, but you can revisit it later on. So I wouldn't worry too much if you don't get it all done at once. It's just good to kind of commit some time just to finish it off. In terms of choices, they will need to put the university that is their first choice. So I appreciate it now in the stage that we're in, some of them might have received all of their offers, some of them might have not received, all of them might be waiting on a couple, but just for the sake of student finance, they will need to put down their first choice. But this can be changed at a later date if needs be as well. So that is the first part of the form. The second part is the part which parents and carers will fill out, so yourselves. You will need your national insurance number, income details based on your most recent P60. Again, if you don't have a P60, that's fine. Please just visit the Student Finance website and then you can find out what alternatives you can use on there. You are able to provide information on dependents as well, so your other maybe sons and daughters that you might have. So there is £1,130 off the household income for each dependent. And if there is more than one parent or carer, you will be filling out your part separately. Okay. And the last thing I will cover on this slide is just that if your student is unsure on university still at this stage, please do still recommend that they apply, because they can actually accept a place and no money will actually be released until that university, until they enroll on their course. So it's very, very easy to cancel rather than to apply late on in the process. Okay, so before I talk about repayments, I just wanted to make you all aware of some of the additional support that students can receive. I'm not going to go into too much detail on these, just to avoid kind of confusing things, as they might be different for each university. And Cheryl, I believe you'll be able to touch on this a lot more than what I will. But it's definitely worth looking into. And there is a lot of various different grants and support options available. Just as an example, if your student's planning on going to study an NHS course, they might be eligible to receive an extra £5,000. Okay, so it's really, really worth checking these out with the universities that they're planning on going to. Excuse me. So the repaying part, this is what a lot of parents, I think, probably are concerned about the most with university. The idea that students are going to come out in a lot of debt can seem quite daunting, but the way that I look at it is an investment, and the repayments process isn't actually that bad at all. So students will only start making repayments in the April after they graduate, and that will only be once they start earning more than £27,295 per year. Okay. What they pay back will be dependent on what they earn, not what they owe. Okay, so I'll show you some examples of this on the next slide. And what they pay back is 9% of what they earn over 27,295. It's very late in the evening. I'm getting my figures slightly mixed up whenever I go to say them. But it doesn't affect their credit rating. They can overpay, but with no penalty. And this loan is cancelled after 30 years. Okay, so if for 30 years their salary was below 27,295, they wouldn't actually pay back a penny. Okay, if I was to use myself as an example, I've graduated university, I think about 4 or 5 years ago. I have been paying off my loan ever since, but I don't actually notice the difference at all. So these are just some final examples. So I'll just leave them on the screen for you to have a read through. Just as the top one, for example, Anisha earns £35,000 per year. There's her income tax on the screen there as well. And her student loan repayment is £57.58 per month. Okay, so if you were just to think about that as an example, that money in comparison to what she earns really won't affect Anisha too bad in the long run. Obviously it is a noticeable amount, but it's worth it for the salary that she's on and the process that she took to get there as well. So just to finish off, you know, as I've said, I believe it's a really good investment, and I think the repayment method isn't as scary as what students think it is, and it is actually it's comforting to know that there are so many options and it's not actually going to affect them in the long run too badly. So I hope that has helped. Like I said at the beginning, we did this presentation to students, pretty much the exact same presentation, and I appreciate I've just kind of run through it very, very quickly. But I just wanted to get everything out there so that then I could give parents in the room the chance to ask questions to us more than anything. Because I appreciate that you all might be at various different stages at the moment, with some students accepting offers, others might have already applied, etc., etc. So Rob, if you wouldn't mind, if there's any questions in the chat, if you could read them out, please. But also you're more than welcome to turn on your mic and ask us as well.
Excellent. Okay. From the questions coming in, what would be a suitable weekly allowance, okay, for students to survive? Again, this is more of a discussion because it depends how you want to live your life, really, doesn't it? But I think actually, Cheryl, you responded. It all depends on the social costs and things like that. I think £80 to £100. Does that seem a reasonable estimate?
It's really, really hard to say, to be honest with you, because it literally does depend on what costs that person has. So you have to bear in mind, you know, have they got to cover their rent, or is that going to be covered in some other way? So have they got to think about that? The food cost is good. I would say £30 a week is an average good amount to consider when working out a food budget. But then are they going to have many other costs on top of that? So it's one of those questions like, how long is a piece of string? It's so hard to answer because everyone's different. But I will definitely say it's really good to start thinking now what costs they're going to have and start working through some budgets, particularly when they get an idea of what their student funding is going to be, either because they've been assessed or they've used the calculator. You can then start to use, there's loads of budget planners online, or you can just simple pen and paper, be old fashioned, I am, and just sit there and work out exactly, as I said, what costs they're going to have and then work out the budget from that. One thing I will just say actually, because this is really quite important to know, is the student loan is actually paid 3 times a year. It's paid in 3 instalments. In the ideal world, we'd like it to be paid monthly. But at the moment, student finance are sticking to their guns and just paying in 3 lump sums, which makes it really quite hard to budget, particularly when you're new to budgeting. So what I always advise is to work out that instalment, how much that equates to, perhaps on a weekly or a monthly basis, to help you budget that better. So the student loan is going to be paid when they start. It's generally then after Christmas, so early January at some point, and then it's usually after Easter. So that's, the factor of time, 3-4 months per each payment. You need to bear in mind that money has got to last. Anyway, back to you. We've got some questions.
It's quite daunting, isn't it? I've got a question about when filling out the forms in regards to maintenance and working out the salaries, do you include overtime?
It is, unfortunately, it's your gross taxable income. So whatever that is, and generally that will include overtime, that's what they will take into account. I will just say, if students are starting this September, so 21-22, Student Finance England will look at the household income from the 1920 tax year. I never remember, so I have to have a look. If they're going to be starting in September 22, that's the 22-23 academic year, it's a household income for now, basically 20 to 21.
Okay.
I like to make it confusing.
Absolutely. So whatever's on your P60, you have to declare.
You do, but it will say really clearly on the application which P60 you need to look at.
Okay, brilliant. Hope that answers that question. Next one is about if a student falls ill or is in hospital, is there any payment that could help?
That's a really interesting question. I mean, not specifically from student finance, but there may be help from the university. So obviously each university has different funds. We have something called a hardship fund, for example. So if the student experiences something that has put them in financial crisis or hardship, or there's some unexpected costs that they've got that they're struggling to meet, it's definitely worth approaching the university just to see what help there could be. There's nothing specifically, say, from student funding, that's paid regardless, but certainly there could be extra help if there are some costs.
Brilliant, thank you for that. Next question comes from, can you say what the interest rate for repaying the loan is?
Yes, Beth, that was on your presentation. Is there any chance you could slide back to that page.
Yep, sorry, which slide was it that you'd like?
The one before this one, I think. This one. So it's got interest on the line. So if you can see that, it's retail price index plus 3% whilst they're studying. And then once they've graduated, it then depends on their income. Again, student finance like to make this really complicated, but hopefully that will give you an idea of the interest rates. If you just want to take a look at that, take a photo if you want to keep that. But I really wouldn't worry too much about sort of like the interest rates and in the amount of debt. I said it's all about, you know, making sure that the repayments are affordable, which hopefully, you know, using Beth's examples, that will show that it can be affordable to repay those. And it's not how much you owe, it's, you know, what you earn.
Okay, but it is slightly above the rate of inflation.
Yes, retail price index plus 3%.
Okay.
One thing I will just add, only because I've noticed that I didn't mention it in the presentation, if your student was to, for example, go travelling or move or become unemployed for whatever reason, that loan, it is based on what you earn. So as long as they update student finance with their new details, no money will be taken during that period of time. So just if you have got young people that are planning on going travelling, I know that a lot of them might be, hopefully, when COVID finishes.
Fantastic. Next question is about if we're deferring for a year, when do you apply for student finance? In this year or in the year that you're going to go?
The year that you're going to go. So yeah, it'll be, if they're going to be starting September 22, they'll basically be applying this time, but next year.
Okay. What is a household income threshold to qualify for additional financial support?
Sorry, I missed that question.
What is a household income threshold in order to qualify for the additional financial support?
So if the household income is under 25,000, then you get maximum support. If it's over roughly about 60,000, then it's just the basic support. The additional support, so if they are entitled to any of the means tested maintenance loan, they may be able to get extra weeks. So that's the long course loan, but that is only available for certain courses that are longer than the standard. Generally, they tend to be sort of the healthcare NHS type courses. Disabled students allowance is non-means tested, so that's no income is taken into account for that. The NHS training grants, again, non-means tested, so it doesn't matter about income. And then childcare grant, parents learning allowance and adults dependence grant, that is only for students who are parents themselves. So I don't know if that applies to anyone here, because I think we're just talking to parents of students.
Okay.
And then again, it could vary on university bursaries and things like that, what the household income is. So it's a bit hard to pinpoint exactly an income threshold.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. If the asker of that question, if that's answered your question, great. If not, then please just send the question again, and we'll look more into that. Next question, does Student Finance England also pay for Scottish universities? So if we're going to a Scottish university, do we apply to Student Finance England?
Yes, you do, because you apply to the funding body where you live. So if you live in England, you apply to Student Finance England.
Brilliant, okay. If we're applying for maintenance loan, do you apply every year?
Yes, you do. You apply for every year for any funding, so that includes the tuition fees and the maintenance loan.
Fantastic. The next question, actually, I think we've already answered, saying if you're deferring until 2022, do we apply now? The answer is no, you apply in the year that you are going. Yes. I always like to say, though, if anything changes, it's always worth putting in an application if you haven't got your offer in, because things change and it's easier to have your foot in the door and then withdraw than the other way around.
Yeah, absolutely.
What happens if parental income has changed dramatically since the last P60? You know, redundancies, things like that.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely a point at the moment. If the household income has dropped by 15% or more, you can ask Student Finance to do a current income assessment. So when you do the application, you need to complete it how it asks, but there will be a question on there that says, has your household income dropped in the current tax year? If that is the case, you say yes, and then you supply an estimate of what your current income is. So for example, again, I have to write this down. If we're talking about the 21-22 academic year, as I've said, it's the household income from the 19-20 tax year. But if you want to do that on a current income basis, they look at the household income from April 21 to April 22. Hope that makes sense.
It did to me, and I'm not
basically, yes, it is possible to have to be assessed on a current income basis, is the simple answer.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, finally, there's a bit of a logistical question being asked, will this recording go out? Yes. Okay, this is all being recorded and we will send it out. Can I just also add an apology for a confusion with the links earlier? I'm just really sorry, but this recording will go out, and hopefully if you've got any questions, we can follow up afterwards. That's it. That's come through on the chat. Any other questions? Please feel free to either put it on chat, or you can unmute and ask a question directly if you'd like to. Any parents out there? Anybody? No, that looks like all the questions have been answered. I'm just gonna have one final look in the chat box. Okay, if anybody feels there.
There's one more question, Mrs. Siposh. Does the 30 years start as soon as you graduate?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, brilliant. And another one, if income drops after the application, will the Student Finance England reconsider?
They can do, yes. You just need to make them aware, and then they'll supply you with the necessary forms to do that.
And I must say, my own experience, they're very human at the end of the phone. You know, they do really try to sort out problems. So don't be afraid to call them, and they're really, really good. I'm really impressed by how they did talk to everyone and talk through the process. So you know, it's always worth, if you're worried about your application, and you think it's not no longer true to your income, then do get in touch with them.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think the application actually is really good as well. The website's really quite user friendly. You know, it's really simple to use. So, you know, give them credit, definitely. They are good. And then we're here to help, like, you know, my people like myself, money advisors at all universities. We don't just help students, our students, we help prospective students as well. So any queries, happy to help. And we also have our own special hotline with Student Finance England. So, you know, we can then speak to them about student cases as well if needs be.
Brilliant. Okay, so no other questions have come through. Anybody? Final call for questions? Oh, thank you. Okay, right there, and you've beaten it me to it. Okay, thank you so much, Beth and Cheryl. We really do appreciate your time and your expertise. It's really reassuring. Just, you know, it can feel a little bit overwhelming, so thank you for that. And one other thank you, I think, from Mr. Massal and myself, like to all the parents as well, for just taking such good care of everybody during lockdown. It's so nice to be back. I can't believe Easter holidays already. I think we could all carry on for another couple of weeks, okay, before Easter holidays. But you know, I know it's a very turbulent year, so if you know, if you are worried about any of the finance, any of the UCAS, just get in touch with us, you know, and we will get back to you as soon as we can. Okay. Other than that, have a fantastic evening, everybody, and thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.